we've been exploring how knowledge and information shape social organizations. Now, let's zoom into a specific historical moment in the mid-1940s, a time when the intellectual air in Europe was thick with a particular flavor. Think about it. After the war against fascism, everyone was allied with the Soviet Union. Stalin? He was practically family, Uncle Joe. And the British military were actively pushing socialist ideas for rebuilding. It felt like socialism was the only game in town. But then, amidst this chorus, a few brave souls started singing a different tune. Hayek and Popper were two of the loudest, warning everyone about the hidden dangers of collectivism, all from a secular liberal viewpoint. Their books, The Road to Serfdom and the Open Society, dropped like intellectual bombs in 44 and 45. Hayek didn't mince words in The Road to Serfdom. Right off the bat, he basically said socialism equals slavery. Even if you're in a democracy, he argued, the push towards socialism inevitably chokes individual freedom. Why? Because under socialism, some central authority decides who gets what, stifling the very entrepreneurial spirit that drives progress. He cleverly quoted Tocqueville here. Democracy wants equality through liberty, while socialism craves equality through restraint and servitude. For Hayek, the magic of Western civilization wasn't some grand design, but the messy, spontaneous interactions of free people, competing, innovating, and facing the consequences of their choices. That's the system collectivists want to dismantle. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You'd think Hayek, the poster boy for anti-planning, would be absolutely rigid. But early on, he actually said something quite surprising. Everyone plans. Unless you're a complete fatalist, you're trying to handle things rationally, right? The key, he argued, wasn't whether planning happened, but the type of planning. Bad planning is when the state dictates specific outcomes like price controls or production targets. Good planning, or what he called planning for freedom, is about setting up the rules of the road so individuals can make their own plans. Think fair competition rules, banning obvious abuses, maybe even a safety net. But Hayek warned this middle ground is incredibly slippery. The moment you start talking about reducing inequality of outcome, you're dangerously close to the same control mechanisms you claim to oppose. It's a tightrope walk he foresaw would be difficult to maintain. So, what are Hayek's main weapons against central planning? First, there's his famous epistemological argument basically. He says it's impossible. How? Because the knowledge needed for rational planning is just too dispersed, too tacit, too dynamic across millions of people making countless decisions every second. No single brain, not even a committee of geniuses, could possibly grasp it all. Markets, with their price signals, are the only way this information gets coordinated. Second, there's the moral angle. Planning treats people as mere tools to achieve some predefined goal set by the planner. It denies us the fundamental freedom to choose our own path. Democracy doesn't fix this, because majorities can easily crush minorities in the name of the plan. Economic freedom for Hayek is simply the freedom to act according to your own judgment. Okay, so Hayek says planning is impossible because of the knowledge problem. But is it just about having too much data? Couldn't we build better computers, crunch more numbers? That's the unsurveyability point, and Hayek needs more than that. He needs an argument about why the human world itself is fundamentally unpredictable. Enter Popper's idea, sometimes called the Tristram Shandy effect. Basically, predicting a system is hard because you're part of it, and your prediction changes it. Interesting, but maybe not enough. What if the core issue is human freedom itself? Before I decide what coffee to buy, even I don't know for sure. Multiply that by millions of people, day in, day out, and you see the challenge. Add in the sheer unpredictability of innovation. Think about the internet. Nobody saw that coming from the angle it came. It wasn't planned, it emerged from countless small steps, accidents, and flashes of genius. Maybe that's the deeper reason planning fails. Human creativity and choice are inherently wild cards. Beyond the knowledge problem, Hayek hits us with the moral critique. He's a pluralist, no one-size-fits-all morality. People have different values, and they should be free to live by them. A planner, no matter how smart, has no special right to impose his values on others. Planning, at its heart, is about treating people as means to an end someone else picked. And then there's this fascinating idea of demoralization. If the state takes over everything, healthcare, education, welfare, it might seem helpful, but it also strips individuals of responsibility. Why bother learning or working hard if the state handles it all? This creates a vicious cycle. People crave security, demand state services, the state becomes bloated and inefficient without competition. Quality drops, people demand more, and the cycle continues, leaving everyone less satisfied and freer. Hayek saw this playing out even with well-intentioned reforms like the NHS. Now, let's switch gears to Karl Popper and his open society. Popper was wrestling with a different but related tension. He saw modern society as abstract, vast, impersonal, built on trade and rules, not personal ties. Think global commerce versus a small village. Abstract societies foster cosmopolitanism, a sense of shared humanity. But Popper argued this creates strain. We miss the security of the tribe, the face-to-face community. Some react by lashing out against this very modernity, wanting to restore tribal hierarchies and exclude anyone who doesn't fit their narrow view, the anti-humanitarianism he describes. For Popper, the abstract society born from trade was actually the seedbed for the open society, the one based on reason and universal rights. So what kind of society does Popper envision? It's built on Kantian ideas. We're all rational agents, equal in that respect, and responsible for our own choices. Crucially, he separates facts from values. Values aren't handed down from nature or God, we create them. But unlike Hayek, Popper isn't a subjectivist. Values aren't just whatever you prefer. They can be discussed, debated, criticized. This leads to his core belief in fallibilism. We're never absolutely sure we're right. Progress comes not from having a perfect blueprint, but from constantly testing ideas, policies, and theories against reality, listening to criticism, and learning from mistakes. His open society assumes citizens are rational, willing to admit they might be wrong, and cosmopolitan enough to engage in this ongoing dialogue. Democracies, for him, are the best arena for this intellectual sparring. Like Hayek, Popper hated central planning. But his reasons were slightly different, deeply tied to his fallibilism. Planners, he felt, get so convinced they're right that they shut down criticism, becoming irrational and potentially totalitarian. Since we can never predict all consequences, small, piecemeal changes are safer than grand designs. Interestingly, Popper's open society isn't inherently opposed to a social democratic state doing things like helping the poor or promoting equality, as long as it's done incrementally, openly debated, and politicians can be voted out. In fact, he explicitly mentions moral demands for equality and helping the weak. There's even a case to be made that an open society might need some state action to lift people up so they can participate meaningfully in the discussions Popper champions. But here's where Popper and Hayek start to drift apart. Popper's faith in rational discussion feels optimistic. Can endless debate really solve deep disagreements like those on abortion or stem cell research? Hayek, especially later in life, seemed more skeptical. In works like The Fatal Conceit, he argued that values emerge spontaneously, like the price system, and are pluralistic. Trying to rationally justify or unify them is futile. Society's strength lies in respecting this diversity, even if it means holding on to traditions whose full meaning we don't grasp. This makes him surprisingly conservative, defending things like the family not because they're rationally provable, but because they seem necessary for social cohesion. Popper, meanwhile, hinted at needing some conservative framework for his open society, suggesting a tension between his radical cosmopolitanism and a more Burkean respect for tradition. Did he fully resolve this? Not clearly. Let's circle back to Hayek and look at the building blocks of his political thought. Four main pieces stand out. First, his deep dive into economic calculation and knowledge, leading to his famous claim that there's no alternative to the price system for complex societies. The road to serfdom argument, showing how trying to plan the economy leads to lost freedom. Third, his response to Keynes, figuring out what kinds of government action are okay. And fourth, his strong anti-rationalism, questioning the power of deliberate design. These threads weave together, sometimes creating knots, like how Hayek uses reason to critique reason. This brings us to Hayek's powerful, there is no alternative argument. Forget just saying markets are good. Hayek argued that for a society like ours, the price system is essential. It's the only way we know how to coordinate millions of strangers effectively. It's a spontaneous order, harnessing knowledge spread everywhere. But this system isn't free lunch. It comes with constraints. You can't just wish away inequality or guarantee perfect fairness within it. Hayek famously claimed social justice is unrealizable in such a system, not because helping people is bad, but because achieving perfect meritocracy when outcomes depend on countless decentralized actions and price signals is just impossible. The system enables prosperity but also imposes limits. Then there's the road to serfdom argument itself. Hayek looked at Nazi Germany and saw a pattern. The popular demand for economic planning and control, even among critics of Nazism, was leading straight towards totalitarianism. His point wasn't that planning is impossible, but that systematically pursuing it within a market economy would inevitably erode freedom, concentrate power, and require coercion. It's a warning about the path taken, not just the destination. This resonates with Thatcher's later Tina slogan, but Hayek's version was more profound. It wasn't just about market policies, but about understanding the fundamental constraints and risks of any system attempting to centrally direct the economy. Keynes famously challenged Hayek, if you admit some government action is needed, how do you stop it from sliding into total control? Hayek's answer became his theory of the rule of law, but not the simple legal positivism we usually mean. He invoked the richer German concept of Rechtsstaat. The core idea: government actions must follow clear, pre-existing rules that apply equally to everyone, including the government itself. This provides a crucial boundary. It doesn't guarantee good policy. Bad rules can still exist, but it distinguishes between legitimate actions within the rulebook and arbitrary discretionary power that threatens liberty. It became Hayek's tool to draw that line Keynes worried about. But Hayek's thought isn't without its puzzles. One big one is the tension between his anti-rationalism and his reformist agenda. He clearly believed existing institutions like common law could and should be improved through rational analysis. Yet, he also warned against the hubris of rational design. How do you improve things without designing them? It feels like a contradiction. Who gets to be the philosopher king applying Hayekian principles to design new systems, like his proposed constitutional chamber? Another puzzle is the anti-rationalism paradox. Hayek spent his career analyzing complex systems and proposing reforms, which sounds pretty rational. Maybe the resolution lies in seeing reason as a critical tool for understanding and improving evolved systems, while remaining humble about our ability to design complex ones from scratch. So, wrapping up, both Hayek and Popper left us with a vital warning. Beware the siren song of collectivism, whether it's Marxism or modern bureaucratic control. Their arguments helped shift the intellectual landscape. But as we see today, the temptations remain. The dream of organic security persists, often through state regulation rather than ownership. Welfare states face huge challenges. The debate over freedom versus state action continues. Which means, despite all the critiques, Hayek and Popper's books still offer profound insights. Understanding the constraints and trade-offs of our own system, the risks of concentrated power, and the value of individual liberty and open inquiry, these remain as relevant now as they were in the 1940s. That's our look at Hayek and Popper.